We're going to call the meeting to order, Vermont School Board Association, right at 5 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I see some of you are popping in. You guys all received the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? We have a pretty packed agenda today, and since there are not any changes, I don't need a motion to approve it. We're still waiting for a few people. I want you to know that Stephanie, Neil, and Bart are going to come out. Well, Neil is going to come a little later. Stephanie and Bart might not be able to join us. I wanted to start today, even though we have a lot of work to do. I just moved my whole thing. I wanted to start by just saying thank you to all of you. You give your time and your energy to all of your communities and to VSBA, and you make hard choices and you listen, and you'll see why I'm getting to this. There's somebody that is not muted. That is Jack. Maybe it's you. I'm not sure. There. Your service truly matters, and as you know, February is School Board Appreciation Month, and I want to thank you for sending all the messages to your regions. And we have a lot of work to do today, and it's a good time for us to pause and just recognize how lucky we are to have each other in this group. I hope that you all feel the same way. When you walk into this space, this board is more than meetings and votes. It's a place where we come together to learn from each other and to support each other. We don't always agree, but we stand together in our shared belief that public education matters and is the cornerstone of our democracy. So with that in mind, I wanted to also thank you for posting your op-eds and for using your voices. A few of you sent the message to your representatives today with that action alert that Sue had said. I also want to thank the staff. You are the backbone. I'm in a very gratitude mode today, because not just because it's the Appreciation Day, but it was a tough night last night. But you are the backbone of our school boards in Vermont, and your steady work often behind the scenes, just as it happens in our districts, you're the ones that make things happen. And there's a lot that needs to happen tomorrow just to testify. There's a lot that has been happening today. Sandra was supporting our superintendent evaluation. There's a lot always. So we're really grateful. As we look ahead, there's a lot of work. Some of you had sent me notes saying that you really liked the Vermont edition piece. I don't know if everybody had a chance to listen to it, but like I was sharing that piece, there, change takes the steady leadership. And it also, we want to make sure that anything that happens at the legislature this year brings the stability to our students and stays based on fairness, and that these decisions are made with real data. And that's what we've been pushing for. So we are today, with that in mind, we have a lot to dive in for our agenda. Tara, welcome. So let's get started. And as I was saying, we had a tough night yesterday for my board, and I'm sharing that with you because you're the group of people that I know would be understandable too. So we were not able. It's related to conversation we're gonna have to. We were not able to close two of our small schools, and I'm still feeling really proud of the work we did, but. I never lose hope, obviously, and it's always worth it to start again. Like I woke up speaking Spanish today, so I don't know how I'm going to behave through the meeting, but this morning I was just like, oh, vale la pena volver a empezar, and I just couldn't get that out of my mind. And it might be because that's where I go, where I'm a little stressed. But with that very long introduction, I am now going to keep it. They moved us to agenda item number 2, which is the treasurer's report. Jim, I might have outdone you today, but it is now your turn.
Okay. The financial statements for the first half of the year through December 31st are in your packet. I'll just kind of quickly run through where we are. We're in quite good shape from the balance sheet is in there, and we're in solid position with our balance sheet. To kind of run through what the first half has been versus budget. in the figures you have in there, you'll see we'll talk about some of the variance items. One is the annual conference, which through December 31st, we didn't have the full numbers in, and it was not looking as pretty, but we've gotten an update on the figures when we expect versus about a budget of about 17,000 for the year as a positive for the annual conference. It's actually going to end up a little better than that, closer to 22,500. Other items, the typical the items that the VSBA, where it's providing services to our boards, that has continued to be quite busy in board development and superintendent searches. The numbers in here are for part year, but we've gotten sort of a sense of where we're going to be for the full year board development with all that work, providing direct support to our board. The net budget figure is about 16,200 for the year. We expect to be ahead of that budget over the full year, just because of the volume of work that's come in. Searches also, kind of coming in around where expected. We had budgeted a net positive about 15,000 for that. We may be a little short of that, but at the end of the year, but still in the ballpark. Compensation is one item that in the last update said that we were running a little bit behind our compensation budget, basically just because of the changes in personnel over the course of the year. We did sort of a look at an update, and that's one of our biggest expense items, biggest expense item. And for the year, we're expecting that to continue to run a little bit below. We're talking about an item that is like 3/4 of our budget, just like school boards, or school district. And we expect by the end of the year we'll probably still be a bit under budget on that. The other big item with a variance and big item on our budget is collective bargaining. And on that, because they decided to take a year off from negotiations and push it forward in the next year, we'll end up being under budget on that item by a significant amount. We've been spending a little bit of money in the great effort to try to get legislation changed for negotiations, which I think has been something that I think all of us support, doing everything we can to get those changes. But we're still, net, we're in good shape on a balance sheet standpoint. We're kind of ahead on an overall basis on the income statement as well. Make a couple other comments. One, we've talked about investments a lot in the past. You just got minutes from the finance committee meeting that was held last week. And in that finance committee meeting, we did our quarterly review of our investments. Those continue to do very well. We recognize realized income in the form of dividends that flows through to our income statement, and that's right on budget. And in addition to that, we've had some decent sized gains, which is, so it's continued to perform, pretty well. And actually those additional gains go into our equity account. Where that's going to be important is the finance committee, the VSBA staff is just starting the budget for next year, that process. That'll then go to the finance committee, and the full board will probably see a new proposed budget around the May timeframe. And where the investment's doing well, help us out, is the finance committee had an initial discussion about upping our restricted reserves based upon the overall, size of our annual budget has increased. And therefore, we're thinking that it makes sense to continue the idea with restricted reserves that cover us in case of any unforeseen circumstances, like a total education transformation or something. That's intended to be 4 to 6 months of operating We're down around 4 right now, so we're probably going to propose an increase. The finance committee will be considering that. And that's one place where the investment returns come in pretty well because those can help buffer any impact from that so it doesn't have so much of an impact on dues. So that's the overall. I see Mark has his hand up.
Mark, you're muted.
I know it. Um, just elaborate a little bit on the comment about Vermont BOCES. I don't know what's going on there. How would they become part of the membership?
That's more a Sue issue, which it's a good issue. Good question.
Yeah, I can talk about that a little bit. BOCES are, well, you all know what BOCES are, I think. They're a cooperative education entity. And there is a new BOCES in Vermont, and I have been approached by them about utilizing our services. So I don't believe that our bylaws currently allow them to be members, but that could be something that could be considered if that's something that the BOCES are interested in. And like I said, I've been approached by the executive director of the new BOCES about that, and I'm meeting with her next week.
Yeah, that is a huge question as to, as we start working on our budget for next year, it's a question of what are school districts going to look like in the future? Obviously, we have a little bit of time. Nothing can happen overnight, but those are serious questions for VSBA. I don't think in any way, shape, or form VSBA's mission and purpose is going to go away, or the importance of VSBA to support education in the state. But what that looks like could be a serious question. Michael.
Yeah, one thought is that VLCT has a concept of an associate membership, which is a non-voting membership, but allows you to access the services. That might be a thought for the BOCES because they're already sort of included through the underlying districts and SUs, but just a thought.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
But it is interesting, and BOCES are essentially required all across the state, and they're going to be an integral part of management of school districts. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Any questions for Jim related to the treasury report?
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. We're gonna, and a special thank you to the Finance Committee and to Jim and Amy and Sue. Let's move into the legislative report. We're gonna do a sort of a working interactive legislative report today because we need feedback from you guys, and I'm gonna let Sue get us started.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to cover is the Representative Conlon redistricting concept map, and he has some draft bill language. He introduced this draft map to the House Ed Committee last Thursday and called it a starting point for discussion. The map is in your packet, and also I sent you the link to the interactive map on the state's website where you can get more details. It reduces Vermont's 119 school districts to 27 districts plus the 2 interstate districts on the New Hampshire border. Along with the map, Chair Conlon provided his committee with draft bill language on designation contracts. That draft bill language is in your packet. It adds to the powers and duties of school boards by requiring them to establish policies and procedures for assigning each resident student to a public school operated by the district for each grade for which the district is organized to provide education for its resident students. But however, if that district determines there is no reasonably accessible public school operated by the district, then the district may contract with a public school located outside the district or an approved independent school that is located either in the district or outside of the district. The draft bill goes on to allow a school district with one or more resident students for whom there is no reasonably accessible public school to designate 3 or fewer approved independent or public schools to provide education for those students. If the school board or the board of trustees of that designated school votes to accept the designation, then the draft bill requires that there be a contract between the school district and the designated school, and it specifies the required terms of the contract. And then if it's a contract with an approved independent school, there are additional terms that are required. And I'll just run through those really quickly. They are enroll any student sent by the sending district who requires special education services, provide the sending district with an attendance report at an interval determined and in a format approved by the AOE, provide the sending district with a report of the academic progress of students attending the receiving school, provide the sending district with a report of any enrollment change for students, including withdrawals, comply with the discipline, suspension, and expulsion laws in Vermont, as well as notify the school board of the sending district at least 24 hours prior to suspending or expelling a student attending the receiving school, adopt and implement policies and procedures to comply with the Vermont Public Accommodations Act and the Vermont Fair Employment Practices Act, refrain from using an admissions process for students attending pursuant to a designation contract that includes mandatory interviews, academic entrance exams, academic history, mandatory campus visits, or consideration of ability to pay for any costs or fees. They also need to provide the results of all state mandated assessments to the AOE, and refrain from charging students an application fee, an academic fee, or any fees for academic materials. And they have to attest to compliance with all of these requirements annually. So along with the map and the designation contract language that I just talked about, Chair Conlon's proposal amends the BOCES statute to require BOCES to provide at least one service in the following areas to its members. And those are special education, professional development, curriculum development and coordination, transportation, and business and administrative services. And I'm going to hand it over to Floor now because VSBA has been asked to testify in House Ed and Senate Ed tomorrow in response to this proposal.
Thank you, Sue. So the objective would be to provide a guidance and response to this proposal. So what I thought that maybe we'd just go down, we send it as part of your packet and you included it there, or unless you have your sheet next to you, and we would go through each of the criteria quickly. I'm going to try to keep check of time because we have another bill to do too. Are you guys okay with that? And then that would give us clear guidance. Okay. Right. So the first one is that it's based on a unified vision and mission for Vermont education system, pre-K through grade 12. And if somebody has already said what you were thinking, just, try to, just either give your thumbs up or say, I agree with that. But so we have time for everybody. Any thoughts?
Which are we specifically just?
I'm going to go one by one, and you can pull, like, I could see that parts of it does, but so be based on a unified vision mission for Vermont education system pre-K through 12. Does it address that? Or partially addresses it? What are your thoughts? I'm just trying to make conversation with you guys.
Sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand, Floor, so sorry
go
for
ahead,
jumping in.
Yeah.
I think it is based on a unified vision and mission. I believe that's the intent of this map.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Mel?
In regards to this map, I still feel like the one really unanswered question is how, shocking I'm going to ask this, but there's not enough. Is this assuming there will be SUs and SDs? And that I feel like I'm not really clear on. And if that's only an SD, the law still would require that in our region specifically, there's one high school that's very all the way at the top, and all of our students can't go there or could reasonably be accessible to that. So it's still not defined. I understand the next section is the independent schools and the reasonable space, but it still doesn't feel clearly defined to me that if that's going to be just a district, it doesn't feel like enough. But I do super appreciate the fact that we're looking at smaller size districts. I feel like that's way more reasonable than what we have looked at in the past. So I think we're getting a lot closer. I just want to make sure that beyond kind of that designation thing, we're being clear. So I still kind of just have questions around that. But
Mel,
Okay.
sorry. I was going to just say,
Go
my
ahead.
understanding what is that it is districts.
okay.
Districts. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to go back to basic unified vision and mission for Vermont education system. I think it takes to consideration the history in some ways is not necessarily based in they're not framing what the vision is in his map, but at least it's like you said, Mel, is smaller districts, and the way the map went around, it puts SUs into school districts, but that have familiarity with them. Would that be reasonable or not reasonable to say?
Yes.
Barbara?
Yes, I couldn't figure out either how to raise my hand for some reason this time. I strongly disagree with that this map is useful for rural areas in particular and does not acknowledge the terrain and the distances that students would have to travel. And not only that, one thing I don't understand is the bill, unless I missed something, the bill doesn't talk anything about how how school boards are going to work, how the districts are going to be administered. It's just talking about the private school issue and what the school district is supposed to do as their responsibility, which is sort of empty talk unless we can get very specific about how this is going to be implemented. So I strongly am unimpressed with this map, frankly. Thank you.
Okay, so hearing you, so we would say that in the first criteria partially, and then if we move into improved student outcomes and supports by evidence and data that show the correlation between redistricting and enhanced educational experiences as a result of all students. I'm looking for others to comment. Maybe we could put the second one and the third one together. Ensure equitable access for all students to public education opportunities, including academic programs, co-curricular activities, and support services, particularly by identifying and addressing inequities that currently exist.
Laura, I see a bunch of hands. I got to jump in.
Okay.
Just to clarify, are you looking for reactions to this map based on the VSBA criteria for successful statewide planning?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we want to have clear data, and that's what I'm trying to go one by one and not just have reactions, because that's what we've been telling them that's what we're doing. So we created this criteria so that we could have some agreement across the regions. So I see Mark Claw.
I would just say that I think this is going to be the RSCA problem for us again, and we need to consider how we deal with that if we're going to say all SDs and no SUs, representing some of our membership, right? What happened this fall?
Thanks, Mark. Michael Inners? And we are in those first three criteria. So if we could give me some comments around those three first criteria. Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I've got. On student outcomes,
okay.
It doesn't address that at all, really. It, in my opinion, it just goes with the, well, bigger must be better sort of assumption. There's really nothing that says better outcomes. Although I do like some of the things in the contract section, which would be things that us districts like ours that have been tuitioning forever would have loved to be getting for many years, but don't get from our receiving schools. But in terms of equitable access, it basically just makes many rural areas, at least particularly our rural area up here in Grand Isle, just attachments, appendages to much larger areas, and is almost certainly going to have a bad effect on equitable access for areas like ours.
Can you give me more of a clear example of how?
Well, yeah, I mean, it basically will have those say, for example, in school closings or allocation of resources for maintenance, because there's no protections anywhere else in the process right now. It just give us very little power, and like I said, we're just appendages on much larger districts, and outlying with geographic barriers that make it really easy to just ignore us.
Thank you, Michael. And you?
I would agree with others. I'm not sure that the draft bill language really makes any reference to improving student outcomes. So I'm not sure that we're ticking that box for us. When it comes to ensure equitable access, the one part of the bill that was unclear to me was I know that they were saying that receiving schools couldn't charge additional fees for like academic supplies or through the enrollment process. It was unclear to me as to whether or not that would also apply to topping off of tuition. And if it didn't explicitly address that piece, then I still think that we've got an equity issue, particularly when it pertains to like some of our ski schools, right, that are charging upwards of $30,000 on top of the state provided tuition.
Thank you, Neil. Good point. Jim?
Yeah, to kind of, consistent with Mel's earlier comment, I guess, to me, from our perspective, we're an SU that kind of operates a bit like an SD anyway. And so from, when we looked at this from our local perspective, this is the first time we've seen a proposal of a map that would create districts that are somewhat like the way we operate today. And I can understand some folks where the SUs aren't a truly, well-functioning group, that could be a very different situation. But I guess, to me, again, it feels more human scale versus 5 districts in the state or 10 districts in the state. I think, from the, I agree that it doesn't present any real vision or mission, and it doesn't really address student outcomes. But I think that to a degree, the shift to something like an SD structure, while I totally agree with Mark that that's a tough, RSCA issue and all that, I think that the shift to SDs would, to a degree, address the equity issue, in that you'd have a larger governance structure overlooking a larger group, and hopefully feeling obligated to ensure that all of its students had equal access to opportunity.
Thank you, Jim. Mel?
Yeah, I'm unclear as to whether or not the designation versus the 3 or fewer options is an either-or situation. We are large enough that we would need more than 3 different opportunities for students to get high school education, because of where the one public high school is. We have students that right now go to Granville. We would have students that might want to go to Arlington and so on and so forth. So I would like some clarity on if we're going to designate, is it destination only, and then the 3 options are also cut out, or could you do both? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sue?
So yeah, it does envision designating 3, but there has already been testimony, like the Vermont Principals Association has already testified that that 3 may not be the right number, that more than 3 may be needed in certain areas.
So let me just follow up quickly. Does that mean if you have 3 options, there's that contract provision? Does that mean that the 3 options would all have to be in contract also? Okay, all right. So it's all encompassing.
Yes,
Okay. So you could have 3 contracts.
correct.
Correct. Okay. I don't see any. Oh, Emily.
Thank you. When I look at the map and I think about how does it identify and address inequities that currently exist in both access and outcomes, I think that this map does not address that. I looked at the grand list per pupil, and there is a disparity in the grand list per pupil spending by district, especially in my district in Barrie. We're much lower than our neighbors around us, so it's still perpetuating zip codes as education outcomes.
Thanks, Emily. I'm going to move us to the next one, which we already covered a little bit. Promote a shared sense of responsibility to educate students with a full range of needs and strengths, recognizing that some populations may require additional resources. I know that criteria was pretty specific, and the bill doesn't go into detail right now. Any thoughts? Okay, I'm seeing none. I'm just going to cross that one. Prioritize equitable access to both high quality career and technical education and flexible pathways for students, equipping them with the knowledge and skills needed for successful careers of their choosing. Joe?
I don't really see any evidence either way in the bill. I mean, these are really specific, and that bill is really, really broad. I mean, it's sort of an attempt at a lot of this, but it doesn't really do a very good job of getting down into the details. And our criteria that we're looking at are much more detailed. So I think it's really hard to say it does or doesn't do much of this. It's so bare bones and so much I mean, I hate to agree with the legislator, but it's like this was the start of a conversation, so let's flesh it out. And how does it do these things, and how does it work? I mean, this might work, but there's no research that says that it improves educational outcomes. I looked at the map, and you kind of look and see where the technical education centers are, and I think everybody's got one. But I mean, that would be another thing you'd have to look at and make sure that you have access and that. So
Thank you, Joe. And that's exactly what we're trying to get at, because the criteria does ask the right questions. And so thank you for that, Joe. I see Megan, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think not to say what Joe just said, but I mean, maybe to kind of cut to the chase, what I think we're all seeing is that this is just a map, right? It's not a plan. And I think that our feedback should reflect that this is a map, and it's certainly not a perfect map, but I think that it is a better map than the 5-county map and even some of the other bigger ones that we've been talking about, and that it probably needs work as it relates to geography and designation and all of the key issues that we need to work through. But I think it's a better starting point than most of what we've seen so far to date. And it could be a starting point, but there's still plenty of work to be done. And I think we would want to encourage them to do that hard work rather than throw it out. Or let me say I would rather they encourage them to do that hard work rather than throw it out. I think it's a much better starting place in a lot of what we've talked about if this is what they want to do. But all of these other
Thank you.
questions need to be laid out, and it certainly is not a plan that we can sign off on.
Thank you. That's sort of where we're trying to get at. Yeah, perfect. That was perfect. So, and I don't mean to waste our time, but I want to go over each criteria, and you could just even do thumbs down, or a lot of this is not covered here, but are things that we want them to address. So the next one will create a more efficient and cost-effective system of school districts that addresses some of the critical expenses that are rising at exponential rates, including employee health benefits, mental health supports, facilities needs, and special education services. All right. Okay. I just need some ready. Okay. And then recommend.
I'm kind of keeping track.
So no, thumbs down.
Okay,
No,
thumbs
it's
down.
this is what I'm sensing for, right? You guys, and we're gonna try to summarize at the end. Okay. Then the next one is recommend parameters for district size by enrollment that are large enough to allow efficiency at scale, but small enough to maintain strong sense of community and personalized attention to every student, supported by research. And I know we're gonna be divided in this one, but I think what I've heard from a lot of you is that this moves us in the right direction and is a starting point as well as enrollment. Are we all in agreement with that? If we said that, you good? All right.
I'm sorry,
agreement.
Flor.
Oh,
sorry, Flor.
Go ahead,
this
Gaston.
is Gaston. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go.
Absolutely disagree with this district size. I mean, if you look at the very top of the map, that is part of the North Country Supervisory Union plus Essex County. My God, going from J, which is your first brown area, go all the way over to the New Hampshire border and then down to Kirby and Victory. This includes 26 school districts plus 3 gorges. That's 29, communities that are included in this. And so I cannot believe that that's, a good district size. And in fact, I would suggest that if they're really concerned about district size, or we are, that we probably need to take an area of each of these regions that they're proposing and kind of look at it by, the area, the geography that this is covering. I mean, good Lord. I mean, that's half of the distance of the state at the northern border. I mean, that's a bit much, as is the neighboring one that goes from Richford all the way over to Alburgh. Sorry, thank you.
That's okay, Gaston. So would it be fair to say that it moves us in the right direction, right? It moves us away from doing 5 districts, but that we need to look more in depth, and then we can give examples, for example, in that north region. I see other hands up. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, so it's similar to what I said earlier, but it groups unlike towns together, right? And I think in general, it's going to be a bad idea to group low population, sparse areas that have geographic distance with urban, yes, or heavy suburban population centers like Colchester. For us, I mean, they're just very different needs, and the sense of community is, if that's something you care about, it's just going to be lost.
Okay, yeah, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Mel?
I think it would be really important to understand better what the vision is for school board membership. They've talked about this being a part-time job, which to me means people will be campaigning more likely, and the folks that need to work full-time in 2 jobs would not be able to take on these roles. So knowing who would make up that school board, how many people would be on that school board, would help me feel better about the representation of areas this large, and understanding that the diversity of districts is equally represented. I have huge concerns about that, especially in those large districts.
Thank you, Mel. Jim?
Yeah, just a suggestion. I'm thinking is, we have very different reactions to this map, different people around. And I hear Gaston and I'm like, okay, I totally understand his response to, up in his more neck of the woods, versus I made a response earlier that, gee, we look at it and it looks a lot more, more of a manageable scale. To some extent, it might be really interesting to be able to provide to the legislature feedback on maybe a sample of these districts, and that, there are some that, the response is, okay, this is looking better. There are some where you missed it. And, that would be maybe helpful for these guys as they're trying to figure out what a map should look like, for them to understand some of the places where it's getting a little bit more acceptance, and some of the places where it's just still a wide miss. It's a thought.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jim, and I think that's what I was trying to get at. That if we could, like, for example, in that one, we can sort of agree that the recommended per active by district size and enrollment is large enough to allow efficiency, scalable, small enough to maintain a strong sense, and then break it, because I know that we're divided in the strong sense of community, and then add the lower one, the next one, which is recognize and address significant variations across the regions of the state. So that next one, we would give them specific examples so that they can dive into either the northern region or Gaston. We can use your region and your concerns, but overall, I think we want to move the conversation. We want to at least agree that this is a step in the right direction. Could we say that? Yes.
I think we could also say, Floor, that if they move forward with more work on this proposal, that we recommend that they hear from, school boards in different parts of the state that have comments on it.
Agree. Yeah. Okay. Now, Barbara.
Would it be fair to ask, we're talking about efficient and cost-effective system of school districts. Would it be fair for us to ask for some data or demonstration on how this is going to save money? I'm thinking about transportation, for example, and it doesn't sound like, it sounds to me like things are going to be extremely difficult, and there's going to have to be new school buildings built to make this map work in some areas. So, obviously, none of these things have been addressed yet. This is just a proposal, and the answer will be, well, we don't know. But can we at least request that, unlike the previous session, that there'll be some analysis and data provided on how this is going to be, that this huge disruption is going to be cost effective and save money? I don't know.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that one. We're going to get to that criteria. One sec, Barbara. I don't want to stop the conversation, but I want to lean into the next one that was emerged from a collaborative, inclusive, and transparent decision-making process that incorporates meaningful engagement and input from residents, families, and educators. And this is where I had highlighted district leaders and school boards who will be most affected by any changes is what we had there. So that's who we would be bringing forward, which is sort of what Sue was saying, and it's already in that criteria. Yes? Okay, and now we can move into, I'm not trying to hurry us up, but I try to keep time too. And now it's to what you were talking about, Barbara. So be supported by detailed cost analysis of current district finances, projected savings through the redistricting, including the impact on staffing levels and class sizes, and, obviously transportation you were talking about. All of that is covered in there. That makes sense?
So in other words, our reaction to it is going to bring that criteria to their attention. Is that what you mean?
Yes, yeah, and that we've been using the criteria to testify, and what is not answering the criteria. So we will lean in the one that I was saying before, is that we want the school boards who will be mostly affected by any change to be able to come over and talk to you, right?
Right.
Okay. And the cost analysis, we haven't seen any of that, and we keep saying, do we want more data as part of our criteria? We would emphasize that criteria too. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then minimize disruption and ensure effectiveness implementation through the development of a comprehensive transition plan and timeline with adequate funding to support all expenses associated with redistricting. Gaston?
Yeah, I just to add to Barbara's comment, and that is based on the size of the proposed district in the northern region. I mean, it's pretty clear that they're going to need to build schools, and if that's the case, I mean, how long does it take to, you know, A, identify a location, B, buy the buy the land, then you've got, you work with your architecture, then you've got to pass all of these other things. So that's a huge lead time that needs to happen. And so if they decide, oh yeah, we'll get there, then what is a transition plan going to look like when the need is for more schools? It's more new schools, sorry. Over, thank you.
Thank you, Gaston. Yeah. Okay, I'm taking lots of notes. Sue's taking lots of notes. I'm sure Debbie and Sandra have taken lots of notes too, and Amy. So anything else that we're missing? I know that this might not feel like enough. Are there any last thoughts, not necessarily aligned with the criteria, that you want to make sure that we don't miss? I see Jack. Hold on, Barbara, and I see Mel had her hand up before, so I'm going to let Mel go, and then Jack, and then Barbara.
I'll be fast. I'm sorry I'm so chatty tonight. I just think that I just want to emphasize that effective implementation, our last bullet point, 100% will require collaborative, intrusive, transparent decision-making, and that the only way to achieve that will be to be going to these boards and getting them together and get them in the room and see what makes sense.
Thank you, Mel. Jack.
So my thoughts are that it's very easy to make a map. And we could have 10 different versions of maps for the state. The transformation, the real problem is the transformation that each district, once it's developed, once the map is made, and somebody decides, and I think we need to understand there's a group of people called the legislature, they're going to decide a map. And our input is going to be great and meaningful, hopefully. But once they do the map, then the real transformation, and we'll talk about it, the busing, building schools, the curriculum, all the things we worry about as educational people, that's going to be the real transformation. The map is, in a sense, the simplest thing. Some people are going to say, wow, that's good for us. Well, that's complicated. Look how far our kids are going to have to travel. Or do we have enough high schools in this place? Well, if you don't, then you're going to have to build one or two more high schools or whatever. Whatever the outcome is afterwards, once people get a map, they're going to have to figure out what's the best way to do this within our area. And that's going to be very complicated. The only other thing that I've noticed from when I lived in Delaware, and what happened in Delaware is they built the Bay Bridge. Delaware had a whole bunch of little rural schools all over the place. And they built the Bay Bridge that got people from Baltimore, Washington, whatever, to come to the Eastern Shore. And all of a sudden, the population increased 300%. I mean, it just went crazy. And then they had to build larger schools and all that. That's what happened. We haven't had, I mean, people talk about our declining enrollment, but we haven't had some major thing happen that we have to do this map, except for people want to try to save money. And all those people, I think, are in dreamland because it costs money to educate kids. And whatever they do with this map or some other map or whatever, it's going to be building, busing. All the teachers and staff will want equal contracts within that district. They're not going to get the average pay. They want, if that district has the higher pay, we all want that pay. So the negotiations, the busing, staffing, all that is going to be very expensive to me. And so if somebody thinks this is going to save money, they're in dreamland. That's my opinion. But the map is just going to be a diagram. And the transformation is, what do those districts within that map forming a new district? What are the needs? And the needs for this area might be very different than the needs from the south or needs from the north. And I think you get the point I'm trying to make. It's going to be.
Thank you, Jack. I get the point, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I think we all are in agreement. We get the point. Mark, you had your hand up, but I had told Barbara that she would go first. So Barbara and then Mark.
Yeah, I just have a very short comment, and that is to thank Amy for putting the names of the towns on that map. When I first got that map and tried to do that interactive thing, I'm like, how can I do this? And that was awesome. So thank you, Amy.
Completely agree. Yeah, you made our day and our meeting, Amy. That was really awesome. Mark.
So I was just going to add some more criteria to what I think has to be an AI modeling issue. There's no cultural match with most of the towns that were put into our proposed district. We never go south down to Fairleigh and that sort of area. And our district is missing our economic center, which is St. Johnsbury and Lindenville, which I'm not sure how that works educationally, but somehow there's just more connection. And so when we look at cultural fits, and I hear Emily and her criteria that she provided, I think there's a lot that has to go into how we determine what these maps are. And I'm just saying that maybe there's an AI model we can put into place, huh, Mark?
Okay. Anything else?
Flora, I think you missed one of the criteria, but it's already really kind of been covered in the other discussion. But that was the one about increased resources to support the maintenance, repair, renovation, and construction.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
but I think you basically we've covered it.
Yeah, we covered it, and if you have heard some of the testimony and some of the introductions from Representative Collin, he has said that it has to include. There's nothing really, but it has said that it has to include money for facilities. Wouldn't you say that? So he's been very clear that it does have to. The details are not there. But anything to add on that one? Okay. Right.
I think Jim has his hand up.
Oh, okay. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, this is a follow-on to, points made before, but, essentially, I think it's really important to recognize that we can't expect Peter Conlon or any of the legislators to understand what it's like on the ground to deal with these issues. I think Jack brought it up, very, very clearly that, the way this is going to actually be implemented, the only people who can understand that and think about how it could work. And I think, all of us have some obligation to try to figure out how to make something work. But I think this is the group, the VSBA and school boards, they need to be the ones who are providing the direction to the legislature. And, here's one map, and we've got to tell them where they got it right and where they got it wrong, because we're the only people that actually are going to understand how it could work and where it's not going to work. So, our input on that, on the map and giving the, giving House Ed and Senate Ed and all those folks, enough of an understanding. They get very arrogant and think they know it all. And the honest truth is, it's up to us to say, okay, here's the real world. So I think it's, I just, Sue and Flor, you guys understand this stuff. And I think that's really important to represent us in a way that says, as you're coming up with this, we'll give you feedback on, you need to get the feedback from the school boards as to how it's going to function. And for all of us, we have to be fair enough to try to figure out a way to make it work when they throw something at it. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that, the tone that we want to set is that we want to be they have to have a conversation with us, right? We want to be part of this conversation. This is a starting point, and with this criteria and all of the notes that we took from you guys today,
right.
we have a lot of questions to ask to them, and that we are we're over 800 members. They like you said, they have to listen to us, and we'll
We
frame
want
that.
to we want to help them get to the right place. We don't
Yeah,
just want to say no. Yes.
exactly, and that's the main thing. We want to work with you, and because otherwise they won't take us serious, and they take us serious as far as we know. So, um, okay, unless there's something else, I'm going to move us to H640 and give it back to Sue to give us some.
Laura, could I make one quick comment on that bill?
Only if it's very quick, Mark.
It is
Okay.
very quick, Flora.
Okay.
I think the term reasonably accessible is a little vague. And I'm hoping maybe there's some criteria put around that, because I could see all kinds of problems being created within a district with just that definition. And also under, when they talked about the criteria for independent schools, they said, we'll refrain from, and then they listed a bunch of things they didn't want them to do. And refrain from, again, is very weak, and it's not definitive. And I think it should be maybe will not. And those are just some weaker points I thought that were in the bill. They were kind of wishy-washy.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, now I'm going to move us to H640 and have Sue give us a quick explanation of the bill.
Okay,
thorough.
thanks everyone for all of your input on the previous one and for paying so much attention to the details. So H640 is about voting student board members. The bill would require all Vermont school district boards to include voting student members from grades 9 through 12 and non-voting student members from grades 7 through 8 on their boards. The proposal applies to districts that provide secondary education or maintain a regional technical center. Under the bill's provisions, each board would have one voting student representative for each high school grade. So that would be 4 voting student members, one from grade 9, 10, 11, and 12 each. And then boards with middle level grades would include one non-voting student member for each of those grades. And this is whether, if you provide education, it's not whether you operate a school for these grades, it's if you provide education for those grades. Student members would serve full terms equivalent to other board members and must remain enrolled in the district schools for the duration of their service. And they would be appointed by the superintendent following a board-approved process that allows student participation in member selection. So that is basically what the bill is about. VSBA does have a resolution related to student board members. It is in your packet. And it is in support of having student board members on school boards, but it doesn't say anything about requiring it, and it doesn't say anything about student board members having voting rights. So that's why we felt like we needed to bring this to you for a little bit more input. I also wanted to let you know that in response to this resolution back when it was adopted, the VSBA developed a guide to student voice, and that was recently revised and updated within the past year. We also partnered with the National Student Board Member Association to provide a workshop on this topic at our annual conference in October 2025. So some of you may have been at that workshop. We also have a webinar scheduled for April 2026 titled Elevating Student Voices on the Board, which will explore the growing role that students can play in school board governance and why their perspectives matter. I wanted to give you a little bit more background information. Vermont's State Board of Education does have student members. It has 2 student members appointed by the governor for 2-year terms. The student member does not vote during their first year. They become a full voting member during their second year on the state board, and they serve staggered terms. Let's see, what else? There are some states that currently require student members on school boards. Those are Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and New York. New York just put in this requirement in the past year. None of these states require more than one student board member. Most of the laws, I looked at them, say at least one. So that's the way it's framed in the other states. Maryland does not explicitly require a student member for every local school board, but it is a leader in allowing student participation. 8 of Maryland's 24 local school districts have student board members with voting rights, and that covers over 3/4 of the state's public school students. But according to the National Student Board Member Association, only one of those 8 has full voting rights. I don't have any more detail about what the ones with partial voting rights have the right to vote on. That's the information, background information I have that I thought would be helpful for all of you, and I'll hand it over to Floor now.
So again, the objective is because they've been asked to testify tomorrow in House Education Committee on this bill. So the objective is to provide the same as we just did. We don't have criteria to go by, so don't worry. But if you guys have some thoughts, I know a lot of you guys have student members on your board. Obviously, we have some worries with the amount of students here, but I don't want to bias your opinion. So any thoughts if you had a chance to read the packet? Barbara, I see your hand up, and then I'm going to go to Mel and then to Michael.
Yes, I just want to say that having that many seems challenging we have an 11-member board, and if we have a student from each grade, and we have 4 grades, so if we have 4 students on the board and 11 other members, that's a lot of students on the board. I'm not sure we would get 11 to want to do it, but I just think that maybe it should be a percentage of the size of depending on the size of the board or something like that, and maybe a recommendation or not so prescriptive. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Mel?
I'm not again. I think it's great to have we have the student council members come. We have students come to meetings, and it's always very, very positive when they give input.
Yeah, Mel?
Barbara, I couldn't agree more. That could be a third of your board without understanding exactly what your board makeup will be. But I also have a concern in the language where it says if you have an operating school in that district, it would have to be a student from that operating school. In that case, according to the map right now, we would have 4 students from Mill River and none from any of the other operating school, because it specifies if there's a high school in your district, it would have to be from the one operated. So I think that needs to be broader in its language. And there says nothing about stipend, standings with the school, or any other kind of provisions that we might need to consider. So maybe that's left up to the boards, but it's just worth considering.
Thanks, Mel. Michael? Michael, you're muted.
I have the same concerns about the size. It seems to assume a much larger board than most of us really have. I do like the idea of clarifying and clearly authorizing voting members, because there's been some questions, I think, about what the legalities are when you have a student member who votes and isn't elected. I think it's helpful. It'd be really good to sort of clarify that, but maybe a total of 2 voting members would make more sense given our actual board sizes.
Thanks. Laura? Laura, I can't hear. Is it just me? I can't hear you. Go ahead.
I think she's still.
Can you guys hear her? I can't hear you, Laura. Sorry, I don't know if it's my earbud. I think other people are shaking their head.
I think I just started to hear you. Try it again, Laura. Oh.
No. Put it on the chat. Put it on the chat. Gaston and then Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Flor. I think it's a great idea. However, I really honestly believe that it should be only one student And I kind of like the notion perhaps of it being a training, if you will, for potential students for the State Board of Education. I mean, what a great introduction to school board work, and then get somebody excited to serve at a higher level at the state board. So for me, I would want only one student, and preferably in the more senior grades, the 11th and 12th grade. That would be my issue. And then, yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, great. Jim.
Yeah, I guess I see this as a vast micromanagement attempt, through the legislature. We do have, two student school board members on our board. They are not voting, and they're both high school, and they shift. So each year we have a new one coming on. They're great. They have been fabulous for our board. Really important. I think we figured out a way to make it work for our board. I don't think we really need the legislature, micromanaging to the point of one from each of those four grades and then two more from seventh and eighth. I also think the idea of trying to bring seventh and eighth graders onto the board, we're going to bore them to death. I mean, they're gonna. It's not easy being a these are full-time students who are also on our board. They've contributed extremely well. They sometimes have a tough time even being like juniors and seniors, making it work with their schedules. It asks for a lot from students. I think that and that would argue if you end up saying you have to have six of them on your board. I mean, I just think this is way overreach. I think supporting the idea of having students on boards is good, but this is micromanagement.
Thank you, Jim. I see Nancy's thumbs up to what you just said. Suzanne?
So we also have two on our board, and we have struggled over the years to actually fill both seats. For a while, we couldn't find anybody. Normally, we have a junior and a senior. Biggest problem that I see is that we don't have any way currently to train the student board members so they have an understanding of what's going on. I normally sit with them, and I'm the one that's like leaning over, whispering to them and trying to help them through things. But they, like everyone said, they have to go home and do homework. If you get students in younger grades, who's going to bring them to board meetings? Now you're probably going to be asking parents to bring their kids to board meetings, and that could be an inconvenience. But early on, when we said we wanted to have a maximum of two board members, we said that they were non-voting because they are not elected by the electorate, and therefore they can't really represent anyone other than their classmates. So we have two, and I mean, these two this year are absolutely fantastic, but that hasn't always, unfortunately, been the case.
Thank you, Suzanne. Tara?
I feel like everything's been said. Like I wholeheartedly agree with Jim and Suzanne, but I also want to point out that it is developmentally inappropriate for a seventh and eighth grader to be asked to do this work. Similar with freshmen and sophomore students, right? And I feel comfortable saying that because I have kids in that age group and I'm watching their behavior, and like it's just not appropriate to even consider that. But like what everyone else has said, we've had two student members, right? Juniors and seniors, some great, some not so great. Some of the time they're watching Olympic videos on their computers while the board meeting is going on. So there does have to be like a lot of handholding and a lot of mentorship, but then like the meetings get to be really late too. So I don't agree with this bill at all.
Thanks, Tara. Neil?
I'll start out by saying I think student voice on the board is a great thing. That said, I think this bill is a bad thing. Um, I will admit that I think that there are things that if this were to move forward, I think would need to be clarified. I think with the same point that others have raised about the number of voting members on the board that are students, I am curious as to whether or not this would make students members of the public body subject to public records requests. I'm curious if student members would be allowed or required to serve on committees. And if yes, then I've got serious concerns as to whether or not students would be allowed to, for example, sit on the superintendent's evaluation committee or teacher negotiations. Um, will they be provided access to executive session where they could potentially learn of sensitive student or teacher information? And finally, would they be eligible to be elected to serve as an officer of the board?
Some good questions, Neil. Megan.
Y'all are more eloquent than me, but I agree with lots. I am all for student voice on boards. I am about to pass a policy as a board, like about making sure that we kind of say what student reps should be on the board. But I have significant concerns, about the number, but also there are a lot of very adult issues that my board has had to deal with over the past however many years. And that it would be inappropriate for students to be involved in that, whether that be teacher negotiations or just matters that come in front of the board, including student hearings, which my board is often involved in. And I don't know how we could preclude a full voting member from being in that place. And then at the same time, I also think that if you are I think that the matters that come in front of the board are often could put students in a really difficult spot, and asking them to vote on matters that are really difficult or have significant impact within the community. When I was talking with the school board student board member association people, they were talking about situations they were aware of where a student made a vote on a transgender issue and then someone from the community kind of went after them publicly. And that's just, I think it's very important that we are very careful about the positions that we put students in, and full-fledged board members can be, that's a line I'm not comfortable with putting my board members in.
Thank you, everybody. I think we got, Emily, I see your hand up now.
Thank you. I think part of the reason this bill is being presented is because students advocated really hard for this to come. So there is like a desire from students to want to be involved. So I think, and I'm sure Floor will do it lovely, that we have to be really careful that we are supporting our young people, that they don't hear this as a rejection of what they want to do. Like, I want to be really careful that we still are supporting these kids who want to be involved while, protecting them.
That's a good point, Emily, because I was going to just provide the context that this bill was written by students. I think it came out of the Governor's Institute of Vermont, and then it was brought to a legislator who agreed to sponsor it.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing from all of you, and I know that Suna took a lot of notes too, is that we all believe in one student voice in our boards. We don't want it to be prescriptive. This is not the only way to get student voice, because I think that's part of what is forgotten here, that there's other ways more meaningfully to bring student voice, but that give them examples of other board. We have 2 students in our board too, a junior and a senior usually, and that not necessarily, if they're not going to be elected, and Neil, you listed, I'm not going to read all of the questions here, but I think we have a lot of good input from you guys. Mel?
Real quick, I appreciate the fact that you said this is a student-driven movement, but I wonder how much students understand what is happening at the school board level and what is happening at the state level. I just threw in the chat here, I'd love to see what the kids say about maps, school choice, and cell phone policies. And if they think that's what's happening at the school board level, it's not. It's in the legislature, and that might be the place.
Yeah, and I do think that a lot of, at least on our board, a lot of our students sometimes behave better than some of my own board members. I know that that's not in all of your boards, but they are really capable. So I think in some ways we can also say how capable and how good our students are. And yeah, Suzanne, I see another hand up.
I
And
was
I don't
just,
want to stay in this bill too long because we still have a lot of
I was
content. Go
just going
ahead,
to say
Susan.
this, some of the issues people have brought up, wondering what the students think. We've asked our student reps, and currently our student reps are 100% for the no cell phone policy. They say they have seen marked improvement in their classmates' behavior and attentiveness in class. And so they are right there saying, do not let cell phones back into the school. So it's been kind of an interesting allowing them to give some input on that. But
Okay, so I think we have uh, a lot to use. Is that right? Is Sue? And we will make sure to share why student voice is important and be thankful for the kids.
Yeah, and I guess my last thing that I would let all of you know, I didn't want to say it at the beginning because I didn't want to sort of head you in a certain direction or anything. I did get some information from the chair of the committee that that he didn't think that they would be heading in the direction of all of these students being on a board, and that they were probably more amenable to something that was similar to what our state board has.
Yeah, and in our school, I agree with that too. And in our school district, we don't want to be making decisions without student voice, right? And we can make that clear because they are our major stakeholders, and they're very thoughtful at any age. I'm going to move us on unless there's some thing lingering. And sorry, I totally went out of my notes here. So now is H 842. Sue, back to you.
Mark's going to cover that one.
Okay, Mark.
Okay. Actually, before I get started on that, just a quick second. I was in the room when the students presented that bill. They're fully aware that they're asking for the moon, but why not? So that's what they're going for. But they realize the reality. I also let them know that the voting ward working group was already trying to bake student voice somehow into potential new districts once we have maps. So they're excited about that. Anyways, 842, the Commission on Public School Employee Health Benefits. We've all talked about this for many years, and the fact that we are behind the 8 ball anytime we negotiate against the union. We lost 2 in a row. It really comes down to their sob stories versus reality, and the arbitrators end up saying, well, teachers should get better benefits. So we're trying to sort of level the playing field with this bill, just making adjustments to the existing statute. 5 major points. The biggest one and the hardest to wrap your head around is to cap the actuary value of the plans. Right now, the majority of our employees and teachers go to the CDHP Gold plan. That plan in and of itself has an actuary value of about 87.5, which means for every $100 of healthcare that's spent, 87.50 comes from the employer, and what is that? 12.50 comes from the employee. Once you layer on top the HRA and the way it is structured, it becomes an actuary value in the neighborhood of 98. So $98 spent by the school district, $2 spent by the employee. So we would like to cap it at 88, all inclusive. So the HRA plus the plan, which would bring it back to where it's supposed to be within a gold plan. We would adjust the composition of the commission. It's supposed to be a commission that is figuring out cost containment and plan structures and how to deal with the costs. All we really have is school boards versus teachers. It's a straight up collective bargaining negotiation. So we were asking that the Secretary of Education or a designee be added, the Commissioner of Taxes, and somebody from VSBA. So people who have actual knowledge beyond just trying to battle a negotiation. We'd also have the Secretary of Education be the chair, not really because we want that department, that agency to have more power, but because that would be a neutral. Right now, my experience when I was co-chair, trying to have meetings with the union becomes a power play. So when we decided a couple of years ago to extend the current agreement, the idea was that we were going to meet on a continual basis and try and come up with different ideas of how we could cost contain and how we could restructure plans, all that kind of stuff. And in the last 2.5 years, we met 3 times. And we'd get, well, what about this state? Oh, that doesn't work for one of our members. Let's maybe 2.5 months down the road. So it just became a nightmare. So to have a neutral say, we're going to meet every other Wednesday at 6 o'clock becomes an easier play. Third, we would hopefully allow arbitrators some leeway about creating an award. Right now, it is a winner take all. Each side gives their last best offer. The arbitrators are required by statute to pick one or the other 100%. So the bill would be, they could still do that. They could mix and match, or they could create their own award based on the testimony and evidence that they got during the arbitration award. Fourth, we would add 2 new factors for arbitrators to consider. Right now, the statute lays out 5 factors arbitration has to consider when deciding their award. We'd add 2 more. Plus, we would say that the commission in general, before they ever get to this level, needs to consider these 7 factors. Right now, there is nothing that the commission on its own needs to consider except straight up negotiation tactics. And then finally, we would have the AOE contract with a statewide third-party provider to handle HRA issues. That would alleviate that problem from local districts, local business offices, and have continuity and equity across the state. So Sue and I testified before Senate Finance yesterday, talked through the basic structure of what the commission is, what's happened over the last couple of negotiations, talked about what this bill might represent, and my experiences being on the commission. Vermont NEA also testified, and as you can probably understand, they were like, everything's fine, no need to change, nothing to see here, let's move on. We will be reaching out to other committees as it comes up. It has not technically been introduced yet. It was supposed to be introduced to House General last week, and they bumped it along with 3 or 4 other bills because they ran over on a bill that they'd been debating them in the morning, and it hasn't been put back in. So you got an action alert this morning. We're hoping that if you can take some time, talk to your boards, see if they're in agreement with this, and let your specifically Senate Finance and Senate Education, because we don't think it's going to move very far in House Ed, since there are, what, 4 or 5 teachers on that committee. Senate Ed might be the place that we try to get them to think about healthcare issues. Anything else I need to talk about, Sue, or are we good there? Questions?
I was going to open it up if people had questions. Mark?
Yep.
I don't see any hands. I don't see any hands up unless you have something to add, Sue. I'm going to move us to the update on the strategic plan.
There's now
Neil?
3 hands.
Oh, I see 3 hands now. Neil, go.
Thanks. Mark, can you explain? So in the current composition of the committee, you've essentially got employer, employee, and it's a negotiations process. By adding more people to the group, how would decisions be made? Would it be just a simple majority vote of everyone determines whether or not something moves forward?
Yeah, right now the statute requires a majority of the employer's commissioner and a majority of the employee's commissioner. This would be a simple majority of whoever is in the room at the time, virtually or otherwise. So if you've got a bunch of people that don't show up, then we just go with the majority of those present.
So does that remove the arbitration process?
No.
How would something go to arbitration?
If you don't get an agreement on, so the way it works right now, it's the commission gets together, tries to find commonality. If they can't, they go to mediation. If that doesn't go anywhere, it goes to fact finding. If that doesn't go anywhere, it goes to arbitration. And because the winner takes all structure is there right now, there is no reason for the NEA not to go to arbitration.
Yeah, I guess where I'm getting confused, right, is when you add these third parties to the mix that are not associated with either side, it no longer becomes this employer-employee thing. I'm not sure how how
And that was one of the things that the NEA raised. It's like, this is supposed to be collective bargaining. And my argument back was that, well, then we shouldn't be calling it a commission. A commission is supposed to be the original intent of this was supposed to be cost containment and structure, and some of that language got stripped out before the end. But if the whole point is this committee or this commission was supposed to get together and figure out how can we bring down the cost of healthcare, how can we make this benefit sustainable?
yeah,
Just being a straight up collective bargaining is not going to do that.
Yeah, I think I understand all of that. I think I'm just some clarification around what changes to the process when we add these new members to the mix. I think that's where I'm just a little unclear.
And honestly, I'm not positive what would happen. I think it's a Hail Mary shot when we put it together, but the idea was to put healthcare concerns in front of these legislators and saying, you created this commission, and this commission was supposed to figure out certain issues. And what you really only did was create a collective bargaining unit to fight. And if you're going to do that, why did you put all the rest of this stuff together? If it's just a straight up negotiation, then this statute is kind of silly. Michael, you're muted.
I had some of the same thoughts Neil did. The arbitration and mediation and stuff doesn't make any sense with the composition changes in the commission. It's going to be a 5-4 or a 6, or a 6-3 vote on everything, and you're going to get it. You're going to get something out of the commission. My thought is more: how would we feel if what we ended up with was the same composition of the commission, but we got all the other changes? Because a lot of the other changes would address many of our concerns. Not all of them, but if we get to a situation where this entire package, we're not going to get everything we want, what are we willing to give up in order to get some of the things like the 88% cap on the actuarial value, and the arbitrator being able to consider the additional things and pick and choose from the proposals?
I would say, Michael, that we wouldn't want to get into that in a recorded meeting.
I would agree. But it's but things we should think about.
But yes, we have thought about that. And, a lot of times when you draft a bill, there are things in there that are more important than others. I'll leave it at that.
Emily?
Thank you. So, Mark, I think I understand what the ask is here, right? Are you suggesting that you don't think that this bill is going to move out of House Ed Committee? And so we're going to ask the Senate Finance and Ed to incorporate some of these things into their bill? Am I off base, or what are we?
Well, we're not. So Sue can correct me if I'm wrong, but it hasn't moved in House or House General, but that's where it got sent and hasn't had an introduction. We're hoping they will do it, but it's not on this week's calendar yet. It was supposed to be last week. So we're not really sure where it's going. It's possible that maybe we can get Senate to think about putting this pieces into 220 or the miscellaneous ed fund. A couple of these points had been in last year's miscellaneous ed fund, and they got stripped out in the 11th hour. So we're just taking another shot at it. So it just seems like Senate has a little more interest in hearing this information. They've been a little more focused on healthcare. That has really caught their ears in the last few weeks. So that's where our general hope to catch their attention.
And can I just ask a follow-up? I'm happy to advocate for these changes. I think any way we can push the needle on healthcare cost containment is great. It's very helpful for me for sending emails out if there is at least like a little snippet of a draft that I could use to write an email to send out. And then I could send out emails all day. But
all right. Well, we can get you a draft, Emily. We can get that to everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
that's a good suggestion.
Yeah. Okay, Clayton.
I appreciate the effort, because what we're doing is not working My friend is Patrick Healy. He's been on this since it started. He says he's just banging his head against the wall for half a decade, getting
Yep.
nowhere and then getting to the end and then being told you lose. And it just doesn't make any sense. And I know Mark's been on it forever as well, but if the arbitrator can just make decisions based on what works, maybe you can make some changes. And I sent a letter to my senator last week, and I opened the communication back up specifically for this because we've been at odds for a while now, me and the senator. I said, "What do you think the wind is?" He said, "I think the wind is blowing towards some sort of a change." So they do hear it. They do hear what we're saying, and so but we just need to keep saying it.
Thank you, Clayton. Okay, with that, I'm going to move us into our strategic planning monitoring report. And Mark, I'm going to give it back to you with the caveat that we're
I will zoom right through
about
these.
25 minutes behind schedule. So
Yeah.
do your best.
So just
Thank
in the
you.
last couple of months, we have made some revisions to 8 model policies. We deleted one, we added 2 to take the place of the one we deleted. And then in addition, the AOE published its model policy on cell phones. Many of the changes, so B3 was drugs and alcohol. We just redefined drug to include the fact that cannabis is legal here, but how do we do that? Employee unlawful harassment, that got changed, and then it got changed again within a few months. It's because there was a change in statute last year about public accommodation, which included 2 new categories, but it's not employment harassment. And so council said that we should add it and then decided we shouldn't, so we pulled it back. Transportation, we added the idea that students with IEPs might be required to have transportation, even if you don't normally offer it. The sections on ADA grievance protocols had the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights in Boston specifically called out. Our current administration has closed that office, so we removed that address. There were some changes to participation at board meetings, public policies. Those of you with contentious public discussion during your board meetings might want to take a look at A21. B21 professional development, we just removed the last sentence because it was a little too specific, that in a very broad policy, so we didn't want to micromanage. There's a process in resolving complaints and the role of school board plays within complaints about personnel. We deleted student activities, C22, because of issues regarding Title IX, and we now have C23, which is student clubs and activities, and C24, which is student athletic programs. So a lot of Title IX and trans students in athletics, we just wanted to be able to break it down and be a little clearer. And then finally, the F22 electronic communications, some basic formatting changes, and mostly the old policy specifically referenced email and electronic communications on beyond just email. So we broadened that definition. And those are the changes we made.
And Sandra's
Thank you,
going to talk
Mark.
about the process for that just briefly talk to you about our process for developing and revising model policies.
Hi, everyone. And yes, to tie this all together, there is one more model policy that's issued by the AOE that we have been providing some feedback on over the last few months. So hopefully that's coming soon. But so our process internally is when a law changes, a regulation changes, or a member says we need this or we need this change to happen, our staff does research about the interest or the concern, and we start to draft the model policy, citing any applicable laws or regulations related to that topic. If the topic relates to work of other organizations, we often reach out and collaborate. So we have worked with the Agency of Education, the Principals Association, Superintendents Association, Curriculum Leaders Association, VSBA, our business officers, special ed administrators, the Vermont School Library Association, Department of Health. All of those folks have worked with us on different model policies that affects their work or their work affects the policy. So we just want to be sure that we're collaborating. We do that a lot. That means that, this process means that the model policy development and revision is not quick, right? We have multiple steps, but we want it to be issued in its best possible form. Once the draft is reviewed, is ready for internal review, Sue takes a look at it. Now we have Mark, so there are three of us that can look at model policies before we send them on to the VSBA legal team. They take a review of it. Sometimes we have to have multiple conversations about, needing to understand certain aspects of it or what implications of certain language might be. So we work closely with that legal team. And then once everything is approved, we do our work back in the office to issue it in our weekly update our website, and be sure that everyone knows those changes have been made. We do hold links to the AOE has 6 model policies that they're responsible for. You'll find them in the VSBA's model policy manual, but we do not touch them. They're just there for ease of locating them. Happy to answer any questions on that process.
Any questions for members? Okay, if there's no questions, we're gonna move to our annual membership survey results.
Yes. So you have a one-pager in your packet that is, just a snippet, a snapshot of all of the data that we collected from this year's survey. We had 154 responses. We had a goal to increase by 10% over last year. Last year was 110, so we exceeded our goals. Super excited about that. So thank you if you took the time to do that. Overall, members highly value the VSBA and rate most of our services at a 4.1 or higher. The 3 services that received, and that's out of 5, the 3 services that received lower ratings in 2026 and in prior years are the annual regional meeting, the annual business meeting, and the regional communications. And so our team has been talking about the results of this over the years, and we've been brainstorming some actionable responses, which are outlined in your one-pager there. Some things we can really work on in the short term, and then our hopes for longer-term projects. You're going to hear me talk in a few minutes about strengthening our regions, which is one of those. We will dive a little deeper into the data from the survey as part of your board retreat and our strategic planning process this summer. So stay tuned for more.
Thank you, Sandra. Any questions for Sandra? Okay, we're going to dive into this entire retreat. Thank you. That was great. It's always wonderful to know our membership, and that survey has really brought a lot to us. Unless people need a 5-minute break, I know we've been sitting for an hour and a half. I can give you a 5-minute break to get a glass of water, go to the bathroom, and then we're going to go into School Board Appreciation Month, annual business meeting, and communications update. Still have. Is that good? Okay. I see most of you are back in. So let's dive in, and most importantly, Debbie is with us because she has this next part, the School Board Appreciation Month. So I'm going to give it to her and get us started.
Well, happy School Board Appreciation Month, everybody. On behalf of the VSBA staff, we appreciate all of your time and service to your local school districts. Just wanted to mention a few ways we are celebrating all of you this month. I hope that maybe in the last day or two, you might have received a thank you note from the VSBA. And inside was a beautiful card that Amy designed for us. I just thought it looked so pretty. And inside the card were a couple of coupons. So we are just so grateful to everything that you all do. And it's just a very small token of our appreciation. And if you don't get your card, please let us know, because we want to know that. We are doing lots of other things. We have a social media campaign going throughout the month on Facebook and Instagram, just celebrating school boards around the state. We did send a letter to all of the superintendents in the state earlier this month. Actually, it was the end of January, to give them suggestions about how they could recognize their boards. So hopefully some of your superintendents are doing that in your meetings. And we did send out a regional communication to all of you with suggested language on writing to your school boards in your region, thanking them for their service. And hopefully you saw those and you forwarded a message to your school boards. We have a reading of a House resolution on the floor on February 18th. It's a Wednesday at 3 p.m. There will be a resolution that's read on the floor of the State House. We would invite you to come to our office if you'd like to. If you can attend, we'd love to have you. I know one person on this call has already said they can come, so we look forward to welcoming her. So come to the VSBA office at 2:30 and we can travel over to the State House together and listen to the reading of that resolution and get a photo at the State House. And then finally, our governor just this week issued a proclamation that officially declared February 2026 School Board Appreciation Month. So that's kind of it. And if anybody ever has any suggestions about how else the VSBA can support this effort to celebrate school boards around the state, please let us know. We're always open to new ideas and suggestions.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. On behalf of the board, I think we all love our card and most of us have received it. So thank you, Amy, Sue, Sandra, Mark, and Debbie. We now can move into our annual business meeting, set date and time. And I think that's back to you and Sue.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the bylaws require you to set this date like way ahead of time. So that's why, and we always do it at the February meeting. So the date that we are proposing is October 15th, 2026 at 6 p.m. via Zoom. And we would like to try something new this year, which is to have the regional business meetings on the same night, right before the annual meeting, not any kind of educational component, but the elections. And the reason we'd like to try that is because we have the regional meetings, the annual meeting, and the conference all, within about a 6-week span. And it's a lot to ask our school board members around the state to do all 3 of those things. So we're trying to streamline things a little bit. Right after this, or within a few agenda items, Sandra's going to be talking about what we're doing to hold in-person meetings in every region. So we are definitely sensitive to the need to connect in person with school board members in every region. And we've got a plan for doing that. That doesn't involve the regional business meeting. So I would just need board action to vote to hold the annual business meeting on October 15th, 2026 at 6 p.m., which we think would be a good time because it's not right before the conference as well. So it gives us a little more leeway in between the business meeting and the conference.
Great. So Neil, are you ready to make a motion?
I can, as long as there's a little discussion that goes along with it.
Yes. Yes.
Move to approve the proposed date of October 15th, 2026 at 6 p.m. for the annual business meeting.
A second.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you, Megan. Okay, now discussion.
Did we give any consideration to making it an in-person event again? And the reason that I ask is because the last time that we sort of, when we did the regional meetings back in October, this was the one item, and it was not a lot of people, but 1 or 2 people just said that they really missed the opportunity to have debate over the important resolutions that the board approves in person. They felt that the Zoom format just sort of detracted from that that engagement, that interaction.
Thank you, Neil. It's Sue and Sandra, and yeah.
We did talk about that some. I think that there's the balance of we've seen that more people participate if we hold it by Zoom, and that it is difficult to do it in a hybrid manner. Um, if all of you feel really strongly that you want to hold your business meeting in person, your annual business meeting in person, then that's certainly something that we can do.
Any others? And then so my understanding was, and maybe Debbie can also correct me. My understanding of why we're proposing this was that we got a lot of good feedback from. I agree with Neil. We did get the feedback about the annual meeting, but we also got a lot of good feedback. We had more people come to the conference this year because it was a shorter. It was a shorter commitment, and what is hard is the annual meeting takes so much time and resources from the conference. Yeah, I'm not trying to be contrary, but I thought that that's part of the reason we were doing that, and part of the reason that we're moving into having this pilot of getting us what the feedback that we also got is that the regions didn't have enough time to get together. We tried to do that lunch, and that was not completely successful. People did like it, but it was not completely successful. So part of the reason we're doing the other pilot of going into regions was that too. So how does this decision affect the timing of the conference and the days of the conference? Because it's a combined decision.
It does affect that. So we only have conference space for a certain amount of time, and it's not enough time to hold the annual meeting, which means that we would have to, there would be the expense of renting some space somewhere that was, or possibly using a school, I guess, to hold the annual meeting if we were to hold it in person. But yeah, it does interact with the conference. You're right, Flor, because we have shortened the duration of the conference. And we've seen that this year a lot more people attended. So I think we're headed in the right direction with that.
Michael, and then
I was actually going to suggest that we consider, the evening before or something like that at a school. So, or having it at a school in general is, I guess, a good idea rather than renting space.
Markla, you're muted, Mark. Mark, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I understand all the barriers that you've raised, and I understand that and the resources, but I really think this resolution process, part of the business meeting, and I just remember the very spirited discussions that were so positive. Well, they were spirited at Fairleigh, added a lot, and I think that's our main goal, is to come out of this with resolution. So anything we could do to make it more robust would be better. I think the Zooms have been a little weak.
Jim?
Yeah, just sort of one thought suggestion for the annual meeting and for regional meetings and all is to potentially solicit comments ahead of the meeting, and maybe in some sort of way that comments can be shared amongst, you can go in and see what comments are being made. Because one of the tough things is, we're under tight time constraints and all. Everybody or people, people should be thinking about this stuff ahead of time. And if they could start to communicate it, then we could start to get a sense of, what people's thoughts are, and then it's more productive discussion at the meeting, potentially. It could also become a free-for-all and a total mess, but I thought in a way it might be helpful to allow people to feel that they should be thinking ahead of time, providing they can provide some comments ahead of time, and then we're more prepared when we go into the meeting.
Thanks, Jim. Barbara?
Yes, would it be possible to get at the issue of discussing the resolutions by amending the resolution process a little bit, maybe the timeline, and to have some other additional webinars explaining to people what the resolutions are and what the issues are, and have those discussions, have people have the opportunity to have those discussions before the final one when the vote's happening. In other words, I think there's a lot of time between the time, there's a very short timeline to when the resolutions have to be entered from the different districts, but then a long time goes when the resolution committee is meeting, and then another very short time between when the committee meets and when we have to vote on it. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I hope I'm making some sense.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Barbara. And that is more about the procedure or the details on the meeting. So I think what I'm hearing is that we are okay with the date, but there's no agreement if it's in person or remote. Is that why we're here? I just want to give clear direction to, so we would do it the 15, and then we are still gonna figure out if we want to do it in person. Is that what? Neil?
I understanding that I was the one that sort of initiated this
Mm-hmm.
discussion, I do believe there is that balance, right, between,
Yeah.
participation and lively discussion in person. What I'm hearing sort of tonight is that despite the fact that we're talking about this in February, it might be too much to pull off to change the format for October for this year. But I'm wondering if it's something that maybe we can continue to think about over the course of the next, several months. Keep the format with Zoom for the October meeting, but see if there's a way that we might be able to bring folks back together in person for a future annual meeting.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, that makes sense. And we can definitely do that. And we would also keep you updating in that pilot program. Emily, I see your hand up too.
Thank you. I was wondering if we could look at the participation, like the attendance data, and see where we had more participation, if it was virtual or in person. I think that would be an important piece to look at if our goal is to encourage participation in the meeting.
Okay. Okay. So hearing all of that, it looks like we have a motion moved by Neil, second by Megan. Is there any more discussion, or are we ready to vote? I don't see any other hands up. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstention? And you're abstaining, Michael? You're muted, and I didn't say any no votes.
Yes.
But sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, abstain. Okay. Any opposed? Okay, so seeing no opposition and just one abstention, the motion carries. Okay. We're going to move into the VSBA communications update.
Okay,
Sue
I
and
will
Sandra.
start that, and then I'll hand it over to Sandra. I've talked with the board before about the shared with you the communications plan that was developed by Chris Haran, that specifically addresses Act 73 and education transformation. Just wanted to give you a quick update that we have been utilizing that Act 73 position paper that has the 12 criteria that you talked about earlier in this meeting. We've been using that in testimony and when speaking with legislatures. It is really a very useful document. And again, you used it tonight to evaluate the Conlin proposal. We do plan to consult with Chris about possibly issuing a statement about the board's response to the Conlin proposal. And we know that it's very important to communicate with our members and the broader community so that VSBA's positions are clear and understood. So I'm going to now hand it over to Sandra to give you some more information about something that we're working on the regional level.
And a little update in other ways that we have been able to utilize Chris's expertise, just to quickly. He is the one who has designed those social media posts that are going out every week during February for School Board Appreciation Month. He's very quick and talented, and we really appreciate that he's been able to do that for us. when we were talking about starting to I guess, reintroduce this in-person regional concept. I ran the idea by him, and he quickly knew other states that had resources for us, so we didn't have to start from ground zero. So I looked at the Connecticut website and the Massachusetts website and was able to really utilize a lot of their information to update our website, which I'm going to show you in a minute. And the other thing he did was provided, because he went to our website to see what it looked like, he provided some real honest feedback about ways that we could improve our website, which Amy was able to do for us. I just wanted to say before I start talking about the strengthening regions endeavor, if you were someone who developed an opt-ed, which is something Chris has been doing for us, is posting all of those, we just want to say thank you for taking the time for doing that. They've been really impactful. So let me see if I can share my screen real quick. So I'm going to shift gears. Yep, here it is. I'm going to shift gears to
our next agenda item.
The next
9.
agenda item, yes. And talk a little bit about, you can see that map, right? Talk a little bit about our new initiative to get back to in-person regional gatherings. So thank you to Neil and Nancy and Gaston and Barbara and Melanie and Jim for saying, yes, let's be the first ones to get this going. It's looking like Windsor will be the first region to hold an event. So what I want to show you on this website, we've updated the language a little bit. Amy also added, if you click on any of these, let me just show you Central Vermont. If you click on any of the titles of the region, you can quickly see who the regional reps are, what their contact information is on each region. And then what's going to be coming down here at the bottom of the screen is as regional events get scheduled, I'm going to keep this web page updated so you will all know what other regions are doing and on what dates, because certainly there's an open invitation to see what your neighboring regions are doing, so we can all learn from each other. Any questions on the website before I close that? Okay, great. Let me go back over here. So with the goal of meeting the need that we have been hearing about in various ways, not just the survey, but often when we ask for feedback, we hear board members say we need more opportunity for in-person conversation and dialogue and brainstorming and sharing of ideas within our region. And so we are taking that on. So we have a format that we've just started to, a little template that we've just started to introduce, and Neil and Nancy are the brave souls ready to be the first. So we met last week and started our planning. We're working on now a couple of dates. We'll have a doodle poll go out to all of the board members within the region to ask for the most ideal timing, and then we'll confirm a location. The VSBA is going to be able to offer a $300 stipend to help support beverages, snacks, meals, whatever you decide you want to do. And then I'll work with folks within the region to find a space that is neutral or, central to the location, but wherever you all want it to be, really, it can be whatever you want. It could be a legislative conversation. It could be just a mix and mingle. There might be a topic that folks decide they want to dive deeply into. It's really open-ended. I'm looking to learn from all of you, and my role is just going to be to help support the work and support you through that process. I will be meeting with Gaston beginning of March, and we'll talk about Kingdom North right after that, and then Bennington shortly after that, and then eventually every region. Our goal is at least one a year. Trying to think if there's anything I didn't tell you so far. That's all I know so far, and again, I will have more updates as we begin this work.
And Sandra, I would just add one a year for each region.
Yes, one a year for each region. Yes, so 11. Yes.
Any questions for Sandra? Okay. Oh, Clayton.
That just seems like a lot for the staffing that you have. So thank you for trying.
Thank you again. Now we're going to move into our NSBA Leadership Seminar and Advocacy Institute report. Sue is going to walk us through, and Megan and I had the privilege to be in there too. And we can jump in. Sue?
Sure. So Floor, Megan, and I participated in the NSBA Leadership Seminar and the NSBA Advocacy Institute last week. And just to tell you a little bit about each of those events, the leadership seminar focused on state association leadership topics and leadership core competencies. And the program provided opportunities for our personal leadership style exploration and introspection, as well as skill building. And I wanted to note that we each spent time with our counterpart peers from across the country. So like I spent time with executive directors, and Floor spent time with other board presidents, et cetera. The Advocacy Institute was quite comprehensive. It began with 4 one-hour webinars, which we attended before we arrived in Washington, D.C. So the 4 Mondays leading up to going to D.C., we had a webinar from 6 to 7 p.m. And these webinars prepared us for how to arrange for and conduct an effective meeting with our congressional delegation and their staffers. And so even though I've done this now several times, going to Capitol Hill, I learned some new strategies in those webinars, including some really useful frameworks for 5-minute, 15-minute, and 30-minute meetings. And those were provided by a new employee of the NSBA, Dr. Felton Moss. He's their new director of government relations, and he's really incredibly knowledgeable on what works in federal advocacy because he spent time working on Capitol Hill. I wanted to tell you that the student pictured in the collage, the one that's singing, sang so beautifully, "A Change is Going to Come" at the opening luncheon. And her name is Crystal Faith, and she's a student from Westlake High School in Charles County Public Schools, Maryland. She also performed the national anthem, and she's performed at this institute for 3 consecutive years. And it's really moving to hear her sing. We learned from the keynote speaker, Amanda Ripley. She's the author of High Conflict: Why We Get Trapped and How We Get Out. And that's about strategies for managing conflict. And then on the last day, we were on Capitol Hill meeting with Congresswoman Ballant and Senators Sanders and Welch, and all 3 of them were able to sit down with us. You know, we didn't meet with all 3 of them together. We met with each of them separately with their staff, and each of them spent about 15 minutes with us on a very busy day for them. There were a lot of votes happening that day. We also spent additional time with staffers of the 2 senators, which was very valuable. And just wanted to let you know our discussions centered around fully funding and modernizing the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, and then also robust funding for Title I and career and technical education. Third was ensuring public schools fully benefit from the federal school tax credit in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And then the last one was we did talk to them about federal support for Vermont school facilities, construction and maintenance. So all in all, really a very successful set of meetings on Capitol Hill. And I will turn it over to Floor and Megan for any additions.
Megan, do you want to share anything, your experience?
We got to take the Senate subway. It was really cool. I'd never done that before. I also got to meet both Floor's daughter and Sue's son. They are charming people. You could tell they were raised by amazing moms. So they were also amazing. And just wanted to highlight it was my first time going to an NSBA conference. It was my first time meeting with the delegation. And as depressing as the federal landscape can be, and as depressing as it was to hear it, I definitely walked away from our meeting with our delegation feeling a little bit better, and feeling supported, and kind of grateful for what we did. I actually came home and wrote a letter to my board, explaining all the different ways that we could pull together all the work that we're doing with what we were learning at the federal level. So it was a great experience, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you.
And I will add that we met a graduate from Megan's district, who's the staffer. Do you want to say it?
Oh yeah. So while I was sitting there, CVU grad was Senator Welch's staffer, and he said, make sure you say hi to Adam Bunting, our superintendent. And Adam Bunting was in Washington this week, and I got a picture of the two of them together. So full circle moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty awesome to see.
Yeah.
That's what I sent to my board. Spent all this. The student took a class at CVU about participation in government, and that led him on his path to wanting to be work in politics. Went to UVM, graduated from UVM, and is now a staffer for Senator Walsh and Heinsberg Kid in DC. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add, noticing what time it is like it is always fun for us to spend time as a team, but also to see get those connections and see how lucky in some ways we are in Vermont, and some of the issues, especially the federal issues that some of our other states are facing are way worse than ours. And the last thing that I would say is that Felton Moss, Dr. Felton Moss, who we hired to be our governance person, also meets with the legislative committee. So the NSBA has a really good legislative committee right now, and that was part of how the webinars came. But I think one of the best parts of the session for me were that we brought together two staffers from the Republican side and two staffers from the Democratic side and that was done intentionally because we wanted to make sure that we see the context there. There were some people that were upset that we had some of the Republicans, but it was really telling to tell how hard it is to bring these two sides together, and how divided, if we use sort of Amanda Ripley's word, how in some ways how easy it is to be in two camps instead of all of us working together towards common good, and not being in that high conflict area and being able to not engage in that conflict. So, things that were said that I think you guys would be it was hard to see the two young Republicans be very much sort of more ideological or trying to stay in that party line, as opposed to hearing and I know that we're recording this, but as opposed to hearing, especially Manuel from Bernie's office, both his parents were immigrants, and like how much heart he brings to this. It was just like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was just really, it was really special how knowledgeable he is, but how he's able to bring the temperature down and bring the humanity of why we do the work for public education. So we're really lucky with all of our delegation. It was amazing to work with them, and they're dealing with a lot right now. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move into our consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve our minutes in December.
So moved.
Thank you, Megan. Second, was it going to be Jim or Clayton? Oh, it's Nancy.
It's okay.
So Megan and Nancy. Any discussion, any amendments to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes carry. Any new business? Go ahead, Mel.
Two things. One, looking at that map again, and then looking at our VSBA regions, I'm curious when the conversation will come up as to whether or not VSBA is redrawing their districts. Right now, the VSBA, our proposed map region is split into two VSBA districts. So it'll be interesting to see and how that unfolds. And I just want to say I'm not certain for sure what's happening for a region, but I am not running for re-election. So this might be my last meeting. I'm not going to stay on with the VSBA if I need to kind of step back from all of it. So I know Jim has put out the word for our region. I'll stay on until a new person steps forward and takes the space. But just in case this is my last one, I just wanted to say thank you all. And I absolutely respect the work that you all do. And have really appreciated the time serving on this board. And Really appreciate how much, even though there are so many different perspectives, the discourse and respect for each other that you show on this board is just really admirable in it. And I'm going to miss it, believe it or not. It's but I just want to say thank you and farewell if this is indeed the last meeting. So,
and Melanie has been an incredible partner. So just want to say, so
we try very hard to convince her, but I'm hoping that this is not your last meeting. Not because I understand that you are not running again, but we hope to see you on our next in person because we have something for you. So we will figure it out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Neil.
Well, there goes the awards committee, but
He did all the hard work last year. So
no. But I just wanted to I just want to give a thanks to Floor for a wonderful job on Vermont Edition this week. You were extremely thoughtful in your responses, and I was very proud to have you represent the VSBA the way that you did. You did a fantastic job.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So with that is the last item on the agenda, and in that note, if the motion to adjourn our meeting.
So move.
Thank you, Nancy, and second by Mel. Okay, we're gonna miss you, Mel, but hopefully see you soon. And all those in favor, please signify by leaving. Sue, can you stay for a minute?
Yes, I will stay.
Yeah, just the plan for tomorrow. Okay,
Yeah.
thank